and welcome to Treasure Trove, the kind of in-betweeny series where we talk about the items as they are found in the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide. You can find them, around about the 130 to 200-ish page of the book. And in this episode, I, Tim, am joined by the delightful Daniel White.
Hello.
That's him right there.
It's me. I can't leave. I'm trapped in a podcast inner dimension.
We've tried many times to get him to leave.
Yep.
But there's no stopping him.
So what are we doing this week, Tim? It's a little unusual.
So this episode, we will be diving into an individual item as opposed to reading through the entire list of the items D. We will be diving into the Deck of Many Things, a very, very famous item amongst the community around Dungeons and Dragons. It's fabled, enormous power is like world-ending, and its powers basically range from tiny to enormous, basically.
Yeah, it is a famous item, specifically with the value to completely derail your campaign. Of course, that suggests that you had any idea where the campaign was going in the first place. So,
in my campaign that I'm running for my friends, my campaign would be seriously thrown off because I tend to write quite a bit ahead and do a lot of planning. Whereas this lends itself to the kind of more free-flowing campaign. Where
the OSR kind of running around, doing whatever happens, and sort of the villains and the kind of conflict that the players encounter are often of their own creation or their own determination.
So the Deck of Many Things, let's just dive straight on into it, is a wondrous item, and it is legendary rarity. So, not to be found in every shop.
Yeah, the rarities are uncommon, rare, very rare, and legendary. They all just they kind of represent levels, but also legendary is special because often when something is given a legendary rare status, that is telling you that that is a one of a kind item.
Right.
So the obvious example would be the sword Frostbrand. There is supposed to only be one Frostbrand, and that's why it's a legendary weapon.
Okay.
And the same is true for the Deck of Many Things. There is only, or at least that's the kind of suggestion of the Dungeon Master's Guide, that your world has one Deck of Many Things.
Although, in this description, I kind of read ahead, and it says that there are different kind of levels of Deck of Many Things. Like, there are some that only have 13, and there are some that have 22 cards. So,
yes,
I think classically, I think that's more of a prompt to the DM to say, you can have this, or you can have, like, super crazy version with the full 22 cards, because I think the 13 don't have the world altering substance ones. They just have the fascinating encounter or kind of will or woe options to them. So shall we dive into the description?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so usually found in a box or pouch, this deck contains a number of cards made of ivory or vellum. Most, 75% of these decks have only 13 cards, but the rest have 22. Before you draw a card, you must declare how many cards you intend to draw and then draw them randomly. You can use an altered deck of playing cards to simulate the deck. Any cards drawn in excess of this number have no effect. Otherwise, as soon as you draw a card from the deck, its magic takes effect. You must draw each card no more than 1 hour after the previous draw. If you fail to draw the chosen number, the remaining number of cards fly from the deck on their own and take effect all at once. Once a card is drawn, it fades from existence, unless the card is the Fool or the Jester. The card reappears in the deck, making it possible to draw the same card twice. Pretty crazy. If you state that you're going to draw 2 cards, and you don't draw your second one because you're eating soup and you just kind of forgot to, you just left it to the side, it just explodes with everything.
Basically all at once.
Yeah.
And you can also, what that says is that even though you say how many cards you draw, and it tells you how big the deck is. So if you have the 13 card deck, you can say, I want to draw 15 cards. Because the idea there, because it says, once a card is drawn, it fades from existence. Unless the card is the Fool or the Jester, the card reappears in the deck, making it possible to draw the same card twice. So even though doing so would mean risking drawing the worst card of that deck, you could draw the best card twice, and then maybe that makes it better.
The playing cards as they are presented are...
Yeah, so they suggest 22 cards to represent your deck of many things. You can also use a tarot deck, because a tarot deck has 22 cards, and I think the 22 cards are based on the tarot.
I think so, yeah. I'm not terribly familiar with a tarot card deck, but most of the names seem familiar to me. Like there is the Fool, and I think is there Death, or is that just the Void?
No,
or Death?
No, there's Death. So if I was to guess, I would say the Vizier is the Hierophant. Obviously the Sun is the Sun, the Moon is the Moon, Star is Star. Comet, I think, might be Chariot.
Okay.
Because it's kind of related, but also because of the fact that the power kind of reminds me of the Chariot, because the power of the comet, which we'll get to, is sort of about being brash and reckless and getting in fights, and the comet is kind of about like a sort of reckless masculine energy, and things like that.
What comes to mind to link the comet to a chariot is it Jupiter that pulled the sun across the sky with his chariot?
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
It could be that kind of relation, even though it was the sun and not a comet. But we're grasping at straws when we have to.
Oh yeah, well we're just kind of improvising.
Yeah.
Then there's the Fates, which is probably which is either judgment or justice. I think it's probably judgment, because I think historically, judgment actually was just like the Lady of Fate, and it just got shortened to judgment. There's Throne, which is presumably Emperor or Empress. Key, which I actually have no idea. Yeah, that's the one I'm least sure of. Kind of depends on what your opinion of what a key is. But there's no obvious one anyway. The Knight could also be the Chariot, or it could be Strength. Gem. Gem. I actually have no idea. If someone does know, they should comment, because that would be really interesting.
Yeah,
to get sort of.
We would very much like to know if you were more familiar with the variations.
Talons. Talons is an interesting one. It's an interesting name for one. Let's get a look at what they use for the art. Oh, they don't have one for talons. Talons could be, I don't know. The Void is probably death.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Flames. Flames could be. I was going to say Wheel of Fortune, but that doesn't seem right. Yeah, so I think these are like kind of. I think these are. In fact, you know what I strongly suspect?
Sorry about that. We have.
Was that a cat?
That was a cat. We have a guest. I'm currently in America, and we're doing this transatlantically, and I'm in my fiance's house, and there are two cats, and that one was Venus, who is a 19-year-old cat who weighs less than 5 pounds.
Wow.
It is a tiny cat. It is maybe the smallest cat I have ever come across who is fully grown. Anyway, sidetracked. Sorry,
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I suspect she can make so much noise if she's that small. That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's incredible.
So what I think is interesting is I suspect why these aren't the deck of many things is different from the tarot. I suspect it's because the people who made D&D obviously were into their historical war games and into that part of things, so they probably knew a lot of the historical names for the tarot and used older names and then used corruptions of them.
Yeah,
to represent.
Also, maybe to kind of sidestep the whole thing about them being like satanic and demonic people.
Oh, good point. Yeah,
like they just came up with their own deck of many things as opposed to a magical tarot.
Then there's Flames. Yeah, I have no idea what Flames is. Skull could also be death, but that seems like a weird one. So one of them could be, in fairness, the void could be the tower.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because the tower is supposed to represent destruction and the end of a journey. Although that could also be ruin. Idiot. I actually don't know because there's already the fool at the bottom. So
Idiot,
there's the
fool,
fool
and
and the idiot. So I don't know. The idiot could be something else. Actually, sorry. Flames is the devil. Because flames is the one where you attract the enmity of a powerful outsider. Sorry. Yeah, so I don't know which. Oh, idiot could be hanged man.
Oh, yeah. That sounds about right to me.
Potentially. Then there's dungeon, donjon, which is an old word for dungeon. Which, I mean, yeah, it's used now. If you look up dungeon.com, it's actually a D&D website.
Cool.
I have no idea what dungeon is. There's ruin, which I think is the tower. There's Yale, which I don't even recognize as a word.
Nor I. What does it do?
It's a curse. It's one of the bad ones. And then there is rogue, balance, fool, and jester. So obviously the fool is the fool. I don't know what the jester is because there is no jester. The jester could be like a joker, like a non-tarot joker. Balance is presumably temperance. That's just off the top of my head, but that makes sense to me.
Uriel is a gorgon, basically the thing that Medusa was. So the effect that is described for it makes sense.
Oh, okay. I wonder what the reference is then to
Medusa.
Like what? Yeah, I wonder where the link is, or if there isn't one.
There might not be.
We might be fools, Tim.
We
might
could
have just
be.
been wrong the whole time.
We just consistently...
Wouldn't that be a fucking change of pace?
We just consistently draw jokers at every turn.
It's like the Father Ted joke. In the first episode, they go to the like really shite fair, and there's a fortune teller with a tarot deck. And he goes to tell Ted's fortune, and it's death. And he's like, there's supposed to be one of those in the deck.
It's only supposed to be one.
It's so fucking good.
Jokers, the fool and jester are probably the same, or is there a fool and a jester in the tarot deck?
Well, you see, the thing is that there's also cards like there's the Hermit, and there's the Empress, and there's the High Priestess, and none of those have been referenced, or the Magician. So there's a lot of kind of characters in the tarot who aren't mentioned in this deck. Because instead there's the fool, the jester, and the idiot. There are 3 idiots in this deck. So it might be that as we read them, I realize that they are linked to a card. But
yeah, that is possible.
With that in mind, why don't we get started?
Yeah, alrighty.
So the first card is Balance. Your mind suffers a wrenching alteration, causing your alignment to change. Lawful becomes chaotic, good becomes evil, and vice versa. If you are true neutral or unaligned, the card has no effect on you. I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
What makes a man become neutral?
Like balance seems to me like very obviously temperance, because temperance is about being even tempered and like rational, and sort of it's about like being fair and imposing balance. It could also be justice, obviously, because the justice is often depicted with the scales, exactly, and of course justice has a strong association with sort of law and like rules and then changing and things like that. But
also about like understanding like the need for balance between the two things. The scales of justice tip both ways, kind of thing. Yeah, so yeah, I suspect it's temperance, but... Comet. If you single-handedly defeat the next hostile monster or group of monsters you encounter, you gain experience points enough to gain 1 level. Otherwise, this card has no effect. That's kind of cool. Like you're a shooting star. You're just flying through the levels. You just suddenly become more powerful. You sort of like take off and get a big boost in power. Mm-hmm. So the comet could also be seen as the star, or has the star got a particular association already? No, well, I mean, like the only reason I think it's not is because there's the star already, but it could well be the case that they're double using it.
Because of the fact that it talks about like kind of getting in fights and like gaining a lot of momentum and stuff. That's why I think of the chariot as being the pick.
Yeah.
But that could be totally wrong. It could be like the hermit, and there might be a representation of the hermit that I don't understand. Yeah. Like a lot of the it's fair to say like tarot cards, a lot of their symbolism is kind of straightforward in a way. Yeah. So like the hermit, like what do you think of when you think of a hermit? You think of like someone who lives out in like isolation and kind of asceticism, like living a kind of a simple life amongst wilderness, but like gaining wisdom from that and things like that. Like, and that's basically what the card represents.
Yeah,
it represents
kind of adventure and like movement from one place to another.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So like that's the thing, and like so that's the reason I think Comet is strength, because strength is just exactly what it sounds like. Strength used to be called fortitude. Interestingly enough, because it was fortitude, temperance, justice, and one other card, and they represented the 4 cardinal virtues.
Oh, cool.
And the idea is that the difference between fortitude and strength, interestingly enough, is that fortitude historically is associated with like almost like being able to bear the weight of things. So like it's like it's not like I can overpower things. It's more like I can survive when things are tough.
Yeah, it's more of a constitution than a strength if we're talking in terms of kind of D&D.
Exactly. In D&D terminology, it would be like the fortitude card would have been constitution based, but now it's strength, and it's kind of obviously it's associated with directly a name, but strength represents like physical mastery. If I recall correctly, the traditional art of the strength card is like a woman, like basically like her mere presence is enough to cow a lion nearby. Cool. And so like that's the idea that like you're so powerful that like you just make things go like, no, it's not worth it. Yeah. So in that sense, Comet kind of fits the idea that like you single-handedly best an opponent and then you gain this massive burst of strength. Don John, my best friend, but he says just call him Don. You disappear and become entombed in a state of suspended animation in an extra-dimensional sphere. Okay, that's a lot. Pick a card, any card. Whoops.
Ooh, not that one.
Everything you were wearing or carrying stays behind in the space you occupied when you disappeared. You remain imprisoned until you are found and removed from the sphere. You can't be located by any divination magic, but a wish spell can reveal the location of your prison. You draw no more cards. Wow. For the record, just by the way, I like the thing they didn't mention there, which is that if your friends come to save you, you are butt naked.
Oh, really?
Because it says all your gear is left there.
Oh,
everything you were wearing or carrying stays behind in the space you occupied when you disappeared.
That's true.
So you are like
just
completely naked in this sphere of like no space.
You just draw this card, look at it, and then like your body just poofs, and all your equipment just flumps into the ground.
Yeah, clatters to the ground basically.
You can't win, Darth. That's what happened. He drew the Don John.
He drew the wrong card. Oh heck. No one ever went and checked.
Yeah, but that's like I mean, it causes the chaos that will prompt your players to like either abandon a friend or go on this new adventure and find some way to get a wish spell. Like
exactly.
I can't imagine that the sphere makes you immortal. So you have until your friend dies of dehydration or starvation or something, essentially. Like you have a couple days at most to save them, and you have no way of finding them unless you're at a very high level. Present your cards to a very high level party. And
well, it says in the card you remain imprisoned until you are found and removed from the sphere. So I think there's an implication there that you can't die.
Okay.
That normal things don't affect you because the rules of the prison you are in are that you remain imprisoned until you are found and removed from the sphere.
Okay.
Now that might just mean that like you can't leave the prison you're in, but that doesn't mean you don't die normally.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea that it is kind of a suspended animation.
Yeah. Like once your friends find you after many, many years, they're older and you're just still in the same pose looking at a card that is no longer in your hand. You're like, oh, hey.
And naked.
Yeah, naked. Wow, where did all my clothes go? Where are we? What's going on?
So I can't be sure, but I suspect that this is the Hanged Man.
Right. Okay.
Because the Hanged Man is obviously like punishment and being imprisoned and things like that. Like exactly what it sounds like. So I strongly suspect that the dungeon is based on the Hanged Man because it's kind of about like being like trapped and punished and the sort of consequences of that. So I suspect that's the case.
The next one is Uriel or Uriel, whatever it is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The card's Medusa-like visage curses you. You take a -2 penalty saving throw while cursed in this way. Only a god or the Magic of the Fates card can end this curse.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
It's actually all I can think of the really, really funny thing about the fact that D&D is a game and not real life is that in real life Don John is the worst because it's like you go to prison, you leave, you're gone, you're fucked.
Yeah, potentially forever.
Uriel is like potentially forever. Uriel is like a curse, but because D&D is a game about rolling dice and hitting things and doing skill checks and stuff, this is actually the worst because your character's not dead. So you don't have a good reason to stop playing them, but they're shit. Everything, they're literally they are just worse.
It doesn't matter. Saving throws, like every saving throw suddenly has a -2. Like you basically remove your
like your early proficiency,
and you have a negative modifier to anything you weren't already relatively good at.
Yeah, like all I can think is how like this represents like let's say you're playing. It doesn't matter what you're playing. You're just playing anything, and you've got like let's say you've got like you've got a +1 to your like intelligence save. Now you've got a -1. So like every time you make an intelligence save, it's -1. It's like obviously it's just saving throws, which in a way isn't a big deal. Although that does depend on the campaign a lot.
That would be hardcore as well because because you're weaker, you'll probably take more damage and you'll probably go down. And -2 penalty to saving throw includes death saving throws, probably.
Oh, that's a really good point.
That's hardcore.
So that's two things. That's first of all, it's too hard to get back up, and second of all, depending on, actually no, I think you're fine. I was gonna say I wasn't sure if the rule about rolling a 20 let you like stand up. I was just thinking would the negative modifier cancel that, but I think the rule is if you roll a 20, so I think you're okay. But yeah, that's a good point.
The death saving throws are even inherently on your side because you have to only roll between a 10 and a 20, which is actually
like
55% chance of and like this brings it down to 45%, which means it swings you in the other direction.
Yeah, and the only ability that normally affects this in the other direction would be the Paladin's aura. Because the Paladin's aura is a like generic bonus to saving throws based on his charisma mod, their charisma mod. So that does technically affect death saving throws. Yeah. Because it affects all saving throws. And then I think magic items, like the Cloak of Protection or whatever it is.
Yeah.
The one that's like +1 to AC and +1 to all saving throws. Because that says all saving throws, it inherently includes.
So there are ways to offset just how awful this is, but those things are hard to come by. Like, is the aura of the Paladin at a higher level, or is it a spell that they have?
It's a 5th level ability.
Okay. So,
or is it's either 5th or 6th level.
Right.
I think it might be 6th, but yeah, it's there anyway.
So you better hope you have a Paladin in your party, and you better hope that they are going to stick around. And that they like you enough to look after you.
Yeah, it's weird because like at the start of the game, which I guess you're not going to find the deck of any things then, it's very frustrating. And then at the end of the game, it's almost irrelevant.
So it's hard to find a balanced place to put it.
Yeah, like I guess like the thing I feel about it is that unlike a lot of the other ones, which are basically like something has happened to you that's a little abstract, like it's kind of abstracted in a way, which we'll get to. The Fates. This is the best one. Reality's fabric unravels and spins anew, allowing you to avoid or erase one event as if it never happened. You can use the card's magic as soon as you draw the card, or at any other time before you die.
Ooh, that is very cool.
This is the best card, full stop. Nothing can compete with this because there's literally the ability to just pick one thing that doesn't happen anymore.
My friend died. No, it didn't.
You're thinking too small, Finn. You can erase entire wars. Like,
Yeah, but my friend died.
All right, well, fine.
Death was invented. Let's remove that.
Oh, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
Eating from
Yeah.
still living pigs.
There's a couple of examples that I can think of. Like, in Critical Role, everybody knows I'm a big fan of Critical Role. They have a deck of many things, and I don't think the Fates card had been drawn yet. And at the very end, there was a very emotional moment where somebody used a 9th level spell as a counter spell instead of the wish that they could use to save their friend. But if they drew the Fates card, they could undo the thing just as easily as they would have with the wish spell. So, I'll have to message Sam Riegel about this, as I'm sure he probably has been messaged millions of times about it already.
So yeah, I don't know what Urael is supposed to be. I don't know which card in the tarot, if it is one.
Yeah,
it might not. It might just not be one.
Yeah, it's his own invention, I guess.
Could just be its own thing. It could be judgment.
Yeah.
Or the Fates is probably judgment actually, because it's Fates is probably judgment, because none of them. Or the Fates is the world.
Dawarudo.
Because the world card just represents literally the whole world.
Yeah.
It represents an absolute world. So in the sense that this is a card that lets you change anything.
Something in reality. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because it just says, avoid or erase one event as if it never happened. So you literally alter the face of reality. So yeah, in a way, I think that's probably actually the world. So maybe Urael is judgment. Okay. Next up, Tim.
Flames. A powerful devil becomes your enemy. The devil seeks your ruin and plagues your life, savoring your suffering before attempting to slay you. This enmity lasts until either you or the devil die. Hardcore.
Dies.
You find yourself a bad guy. You suddenly have a bad guy.
You do, yeah. You literally get a villain. So so as I said before when we were talking about it, I think Flames is just the devil.
Yeah.
Because it's the card that represents. Okay, so this is a very cool card as well. It's nice because my only, I don't think this is even really a criticism of the card. It's just kind of an observation. It's kind of a shame that because the player has to draw the card, that they know what they've done in a way.
Yeah.
I almost feel like it would be more interesting as a mystery.
Okay. Yeah.
What you could do,
you just feel some infernal influence. You feel like the hairs on the back of your neck go up.
No, just cultists keep kicking your door and stuff. Just bad stuff happens to you. It's just it's terrible. One thing that could be very, very clever if you are a cunning DM, is you could have it be that the party are harassed by a devil for the entire campaign, and then you give them a deck of many things, and then you fix the deck so that whoever you want to be the devil's rival draws flames.
Yeah.
And you could explain that it's the devil has been doing that the whole time. In other words, the devil had you had its enmity before you drew the card, almost ignoring the temporal element. You were always going to draw the card, so it was always going to become your enemy. So it became your enemy before you drew the card, and then you could undo that with the Fates, which would be cool.
Because it says a devil, which, since we are reading the 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons Master or Dungeon Master's Guide, it probably means a specific type of devil. And the higher level ones are the Bone Devil, the Chain Devil, and Erinyes, Horn Devil, Ice Devil.
The big one with the sword and the lightning whip.
Oh, that's a demon. That's the Balor.
Oh, is that a demon?
Yeah.
Oh,
the Pit Fiend
that was a demon.
is the big bad of the devil.
Oh yeah, sorry. The Pit Fiend is the big bad devil. Yeah. You could also go kind of you could roll on a table for a devil, or you could do something kind of interesting where you could deliberately pick a weak devil, like an imp.
Yeah, an imp, and it just bothers people.
Yeah, or figure out how an imp would enact this, given that it doesn't have the raw power of a normal devil that you'd expect, and even that breach of the player's expectations, right? Because they'll expect a pit fiend or a chain devil or whatever, and the idea that it's like just a really clever imp who, you know, has this supernatural enmity towards you and has used every trick they can to turn against you. And so, like, you know, I like the idea that maybe it's an escalation where it starts off incompetent and becomes more dangerous.
Like, I have the imp here in front of me, and it can shape change. So it would be one of those guys that can kind of hide and follow you from a distance without you really noticing at all. It can change into a rat, it can turn into a raven, it can turn into a spider, or it can turn into its original impish form.
It can appear as mist, poisonous fog, astral projection. That is a line from the 1997 movie Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves. It is a bad movie, but also
we're gonna have the cult of that movie after us now.
I mean, the cult of that movie is just my friend who showed it to me, who still thinks it's pretty good.
Okay,
I mean, like,
podcast. I think shitty movie.
God damn it! One day I won't be a schmo. But yeah, it's not a great movie, but it is weird, and that has its own value. It's a good movie to get and like have a few friends and a few drinks and laugh about. But it isn't, you know, super serious, excellent watching or whatever. Cool. Fool. You lose 10,000 experience points. Discard this card and draw from the deck again, counting both draws as one of your declared draws. If losing that much experience would cause you to lose a level, you instead lose an amount that leaves you with just enough XP to keep your level. So this is a boring card.
Yeah, that's like extremely ineffective.
Because all I can think is like, if you are using experience points, which a lot of games aren't bothering, that's a whole discussion about whether experience points are worth using. A lot of people like milestones. I've started using experience with you guys, obviously, in my new campaign, and I'm a really big fan of it.
Me too. I do use XP, but I do recognize also that a lot of people follow like the pre-written stuff, like the Curse of Strahd and the Cult of the Dragon Queen, all that stuff.
Oh yeah, and they just have milestones.
They
yeah,
have
of
milestones.
Course, yeah.
So in their own guides, this will be useless.
Yeah, that's a very keen observation, Tim. Well done.
Thank you.
No, see, I didn't even think of that, like, because I never think, because of like how I am, like I never think about how pre-written adventures wouldn't work with this, because I don't use pre-written adventures, like, not because I dislike them, just because I often have like 2 or 3 ideas in reserve waiting for a group and enough time to run a game.
Yeah.
So like I just don't need them, like. But yeah, that's a really good point. This is a card that literally
doesn't work.
like first of all, doesn't work in the context of the worst it will do is drop you 10,000 experience, and at that stage you will be so high level that it won't necessarily matter.
Yeah.
And also the DM will be kind of like in my case, for example, like I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable doing that to a player, because all that means is that when everyone else levels up, they won't.
Yeah.
Now that said, there are obviously cards like the Comet immediately lets you level up, so there's almost a kind of an implicit agreement that if you are using the deck of many things, you are okay with doing these things to your players. You know what I mean? Like because of sort of how I think, I feel like a card like Dungeon is actually kind of fine, because what happens is obviously a player gets imprisoned in another dimension, and like they're so obviously not a player anymore that whoever was playing them gets to play someone else. So they're still playing D&D, and obviously if they're very attached to their character, they might be frustrated, but ultimately like they will be like encouraged by the fact that even if you are playing as this other character you're not as fond as, you are only playing it for them as long as it takes you to get your original character. And that's a great motivation for them to keep playing.
Yeah. Because it's still there, still exists in the world.
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. Yeah. Oh yeah, your character's still around. They're just really stuck, and they need you to go get them.
Yeah.
And maybe bring a pair of pants. Like so yeah. Comparatively, like I just feel like this one is like you lose experience. You can't lose enough to level down, which basically means at lower levels you just drop to minimum experience realistically.
Yeah. Like I have the experience points table here, and
oh great,
you get to at level 6 you need 1,400 experience to get there, or 14,000 experience. So
Yeah.
below level 6, this will virtually be useless. So maybe
Yeah.
this would suggest that you introduce this deck of many things at around about level 7, level 8, where this kind of thing could affect that. But I really don't think that 10,000 experience is particularly effective in virtually any kind of significant way.
I feel like the main thing about it is that it's not interesting.
Yeah,
That
it's
would
not
be
exciting.
that would be that would be my criticism of it. Is obviously it's frustrating, and like there's a weird thing where like the DM now has one player who's not going to level up at the same time, and like sure in game like that's the agreed upon thing, but you're still going to feel bad like as a player when like everyone else gets to level up and you don't. And there are catch up mechanics. There are rules for you can spend your downtime training and literally spending gold to get experience. So you can obviously have someone do that so they get better. So there are ways around it, but still, it is just like all that stuff aside. It's just like fundamentally, it's not that interesting. All that happens is
I just had a thought of a way that it could be used to be kind of useful. Like maybe it's used to kind of cause a slightly, like it's a memory loss card essentially. Like you lose the experience, but only temporarily. Like you lose the memories of these fights that you fought, but like you get to regain them essentially. Like if this is what happened to me, and I read that for the first time, I was like, what the hell? Why would that happen? Like keep track of the experience that they are still gaining, but like give them a chunk every once in a while of that 10,000 that they lost, and then eventually they'll gain the rest of their memory back and be on a same footing as the rest of your party.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's almost like you make it a narrative thing where they have forgotten parts of what they've done.
Yeah.
And so as they regain those memories,
They regain the experience, the
regain the
literal experience.
the literal experience. Yeah, there's some cool stuff you could do there where you go back to places you visited before. That'd be a great opportunity for that. Like you go back to like the first dungeon you all fought in together, and like maybe it's just abandoned, and you just have this kind of like fun, like contemplative moment where the players get to reflect on how far they've come, or you fill it with like new enemies and they get to like power stomp these like stupid goblins or whatever, and then you're like, yeah, no one really like oh, you all get like whatever this much experience, but Grog the half orc gets an extra whatever 1,000 because he's remembered. He's remembered like what he did here before, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. So that's one way to work with it.
Yeah. So do you want to do the next one?
Sure. The next one is the gem. 25 pieces of jewelry worth 2,000 gold pieces or 50 gems worth 1,000 gold pieces each appear at your feet.
So you get 50,000 gold.
You get lots of money.
That's it. You get dollars. It's fine.
Dollar bills. You could probably buy yourself a castle near your favorite city in world. You just build yourself something.
Just buy like a nice like a block of flats.
Yeah.
And
or retire.
retire.
Live by a lake.
Best play.
Just be happy.
Fuck this, I'm retiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think there's much we can say about that really.
It doesn't particularly prompt anything. I mean, if you have the deck of many things on your person and you're just like, you know what, I'm going to draw this while you're on an adventure, and you draw the gem, you're like, oh, I don't need a payment that I'm going to get for this job anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, cool, I guess.
It's like a demotivator almost.
Yeah, it's fine. Like it just sort of literally just gives you money. I mean, the only thing I can think of is the fact that they're gemstones and they appear at your feet. That like they could get snatched by someone else or something, but like that's not really interesting. I mean,
the influx of that much gold into the economy is really going to mess things up as well. You're going to have depreciation and like economic flow is going to be all over the place.
Yes.
Cool. So that's fine.
Not a lot to say on that one. We'll just move on. Sure. Idiot. Permanently reduce your intelligence by 1d4 plus 1 to a minimum score of 1. You can draw one additional card beyond your declared draws. This one is interesting.
Weird.
So obviously it permanently reduces your intelligence and does not mention. This is not. Yeah, this is not a curse effect. This is not a. This is not like Urail, or whatever. This is not a sort of thing that happens to you that you can deal with. This is just something that, like, once it is done, it is done.
That would really suck for like a wizard or an intelligence caster. Are wizards the only intelligence casters?
Eldritch Knights.
Oh, okay. But yeah, that would suck for them.
It's interesting in that sense, because there's like this weird thing where either you are the wizard or the Eldritch Knight, and then you're like, no, or you're anyone else, and you're like, okay.
I'm just a bit dumber now. Also, that qualifier to a minimum score of 1 doesn't make sense, because it's 1d4 plus 1. The absolute minimum you're going to get is 2.
No. That's the minimum your intelligence can end up as. It cannot reduce you to 0 intelligence.
I see.
Is what it is saying. Which I would hope it can't do anyway, because the max it reduces you by is 5, which would suggest you have an intelligence of 5, which is like
you are just
a horse has intelligence 6, so you are less smart than a horse, which is concerning.
Indeed, we should get that checked.
Yeah, I am concerned.
How would that be narratively interesting? I mean, it basically just gives one of your characters either a handicap on a stat that would be useful to them, or you get to act a bit more goofy.
I like the fact that you get to draw an additional card. That's interesting, especially the fact that it's a can effect. This appears to be the only time that it's sort of given to you as like a consolation prize, almost.
Or maybe it's a reflection of, like, you lose your intelligence and suddenly you're like, wait, did I say 1 or 2? But it doesn't punish you for drawing the extra card.
Yeah, of course. But not much else to say there, really. It's a little swingy. I think what's interesting is, like, this is sort of a good time to talk about the fact that, like, as we know before, it says the deck of many things. It either appears as a deck of 13 cards or 22 cards. What you could do there, what I'm immediately thinking is how I could take the cards that I think are most interesting and just make them into a 13-card deck.
Yeah.
So, like, obviously it says, oh, you shouldn't have X cards in a 13-card deck. You shouldn't have Dungeon. It should only appear in the larger deck. But, like, I might just include Dungeon because I think it's an interesting card.
Yeah,
some other cards aren't.
It is a good prompt to broaden your world and make more characters for your... Like, if this is a first game that people are playing, like, you have some relatively inexperienced players, it might feel a little bit cruel making them get rid of their character, but it also puts them into the shoes of a new character and gives them a bit more walking around space.
And it is less permanent than just dying normally.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is often 100% permanent. This is like, you can go get them, it will just take a lot of work.
So the next one is the Jester. You gain 10,000 experience, or you can draw 2 additional cards beyond your declared draws.
So, again, does not work with the pre-written adventures, as you pointed out, Tim. No level limit, which is actually kind of cool. The fact that it can bump you up levels.
Yeah.
So, if a low-level character drew it, they'd end up as level 5 or something, which is interesting. Or you can draw 2 cards. That's a risky move.
That is.
I'd be curious to see if
real risky business.
How often people decide to do that. In fairness, I guess it's because if you don't gain any experience, if you don't have experience in your game, it's like it's a card that does nothing, or it's a card that gives you more cards.
Oh, okay. So the Jester is kind of like, he's toying with you. So if you're playing in a game that doesn't have XP, it, like, practically, you can say drop the can and you have to draw 2 more cards.
Yeah,
so
you can do that.
It's like, it's almost another curse that, like, you have to take the chance on drawing 2 more cards. That's probably how I'd play it if I wasn't playing an XP.
I suppose the other thing I would say is that the Jester is one of the cards of the deck that does not reappear. So whoever is using the deck of many things knows when they draw the Jester, if they don't use it, they will never get another opportunity to use it. Because unlike the other cards in the deck, it disappears after one use. So in a way, I think that drawing 2 extra cards probably isn't a good idea, but I think you can kind of connive someone into thinking it's worth doing. If they don't want that 10,000 experience, you could be like, so like, let's say you're playing a non-experienced game and they draw a card and they're like, I could draw 2 more cards. I don't really want to do that because it's kind of risky. You could be like, oh, well, remember, the Jester doesn't reappear, so if you don't use it now, you will never get a chance to use it. And you've got this number of cards, so this is the chances maybe of you drawing a bad one. Stuff like that, which would be kind of fun. But yeah, overall, the Jester is also kind of boring because
Yeah.
it just gives you some experience.
Like you could just state that you want to draw 2 more cards after drawing a card anyway, you know?
Yeah, well, yeah, you do declare a number. So yeah, you could just declare a number that's higher, but yeah, it's kind of weird. Anyway,
Anyway.
key. Key is nice and simple. A rare or rarer magic item with which you are proficient appears in your hands. The DM chooses the weapon. It is interesting that it's not a magic item, it's a magic weapon. I think that's interesting. And that it's called key, even though it's a weapon. I don't know which tower that is. I could not even like
Is there a
hazard
swords
a
one?
guess. In tarot, so in old decks, what's interesting, and this is kind of what I was thinking about. So before we had what we have, which is diamonds, spades, clubs, and hearts, there were pentacles, swords, wands, and I've forgotten the last one. Pentacles, swords, wands, and cups. That was it. So I was thinking that the key could be a reference to one of the old houses. Because obviously there's the House of Swords, but I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting. What I like about this card, even though it's not like as exciting or as weird as like the Fates or Dungeon, what I do like about Key is that it's both straightforward and also like super feels good.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, doesn't really matter who you are or what you play as or what you use. There's like you literally are guaranteed a magic weapon with which you are proficient.
Yeah.
And like unlike 10,000 experience or unlike losing intelligence or getting a -2 to everything, like this is something that like isn't like, so the difference between this and the Jester in my eyes is that the Jester just gives you something you were going to get anyway. Like if you play enough D&D, you'll get 10,000 experience. But this is like, boom, you've got a new weapon. Isn't that cool? Like, you know what I mean? And it feels different.
You could give them another fun thing if you don't want to just give them a super cool flaming ice sword. You could also just give them...
Why would you not want to give them that? It sounds amazing.
I just came to the top of my head. Anyway, you could probably give them something like interesting, like, or funny, like make it a bit goofy, like it's a wobbly sword, like it's a sword, but it just kind of wobbles a bit.
Come on, Tim.
Incredible. It's a legendary item.
It says rare. It says rare or rarer.
Yeah.
So as long as it does something cool, that you're fine.
Yeah, it wobbles.
But yeah, for the record, there's like flipping loads of
There
rare
are a
weapons
lot of
in
rare
this very book that we are reading.
On this very page, even.
Literally the next item in the list, which we won't have time to cover today, is Defender, which is a legendary sword. And a very good one, by the way. I used a version of it for someone I gave a magic item in my campaign, because it's actually a really cool ability. So the key is really good. That's an example of one I would keep in my sort of 13 card like deck where I'm trying to get all the interesting ones, because it's just like you draw it and it's like, cool, you get a magic item, like everyone loves getting magic items. And obviously the key says a magic weapon, but you can break that rule if you know, for example, oh, the character who drew it is the wizard and they don't really care, right? Like maybe you can give them a wand of the war mage, but like that's not super exciting. So maybe you give them like a cool magic hat, or I guess the staves might count as weapons.
Yeah.
Or you can just say, yeah, like I'll give him a staff of the archmage because that'd be rad.
Yeah.
Or just do a Kingdom Hearts and the key card gives you a big sword that's a key.
Big key sword.
In fairness, though, one thing I will say that I've always thought was cool is that in Kingdom Hearts, his sword is a big key, and when he hits chests, they open. And I always thought like that'd be a great weapon in D&D. Just give it to anyone in the party. Just like literally, it is like a keyblade, and when you hit like a chest or a locked container with it, it just opens up.
It's like a skeleton key, like a universal skeleton key.
Yeah. Made out of real skeletons.
No, they're too spooky and or scary.
I hope we'll never be able to tell. Okay, so next up is the Knight.
The Knight.
Tim?
You gain the service of a 4th level fighter who appears in a space you choose within 30 feet of you. The fighter is of the same race as you and serves you loyally until death, believing the fates have drawn him or her to you. You control this character. All right, you get a friend. you
got a friend in me.
That's bizarre. I mean,
Yeah,
this person is just ripped from whatever they were doing, presumably practicing fighting and speaking to the universe, because they're suddenly transported to your side against their will, presumably.
well, this is a very old D&D thing. So obviously, way back when in D&D, there was a kind of a tradition of things called hirelings, which were basically like hired servants that you had do things for you, say in fights or outside of fights or in dungeons. A classic example was the torchbearer, which was you basically paid someone to carry a torch in the dungeon for you, because if you're carrying the torch, you're the source of light, which means if someone is attacking the group, they'll attack the torches first. So you don't want to do it, so you'll pay someone else to do it. So this is sort of a callback to that stuff. Like even in Pathfinder, there's a feat called leadership, which just lets you start hiring people to follow you around. And you get two kinds of followers. You get followers, which are just called followers, and they're just like basically like normal people. Like they just kind of like they have heard like word of your deeds and they want to follow you around and help you. But you get one special follower called your cohort, who is like a lower level character of your choice, and you literally just build a second character, which is very cool. Yeah, it's famously one of the most powerful feats in the game, obviously because you get a second character, and it is very commonly house ruled. The feat is banned because it's very difficult to deal with, especially if multiple people in the party start doing it. The idea that like you're running a game for 4 people, but there's 8 characters at the table, which is obviously kind of reasonable.
That would get very unwieldy, I think, very quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Knight overall is kind of interesting. I feel it's unusual that it's specifically a 4th level fighter, because again, we're touching on that thing where like some of this stuff is more valuable depending on which level you're on, and like less valuable or less affecting depending on where you are in terms of your level. And so in a way, it's almost weird. Like one of the great strengths of 5th edition is it has a design mechanic called bounding accuracy. I don't know if we've mentioned it before, Tim. But so the basic idea behind, bounded, not bounding, bounded accuracy. The basic idea is that a level 1 character is still fundamentally a threat to a level 10 character or a level 20 character. And that doesn't mean, I can fight this guy. But the idea is that like even at level 20, if you walk into a town and everyone in the village decides to attack you, they will threaten you, right? Like, they might not kill you because you might have enough tricks and health that you'll survive. But in something like Pathfinder, all your stats scale so high that, like, you become literally superhuman by the end of the game. Like, you can drop off buildings and just survive and things like that. Whereas 5th edition has much more of sort of a restrained system where your AC never really goes that high, and your health obviously does go up, but everyone still kind of deals okay damage throughout. So like the basic idea is that like like in 5th edition specifically, numbers of how many people you bring to a fight is almost the most valuable thing you can do, more so than how good the people you are who you bring to the fight. So this is interesting because in a way, because of those rules, a 4th level fighter, even if you are say 15th level, is still useful. It's still a 4th level fighter. Like, they've got enough health, they'll survive 1 or 2 hits, they could bring some useful abilities, they can do things that you can't do, they can fill in a gap in the party. So like, they're not useless, obviously, but it is interesting because I would wonder if there was something to be said for like what I might say that it's your level -4, but it's a minimum 4th level character. So in other words, if you're very high level, like if you're like 17th level, the fighter stays relevant. But if you are like only 6th level, then you still get a 4th level fighter. You still get a cool companion who's valuable. I do really think it's so funny that it says you gain the service of a 4th level fighter who appears in a square you choose within 30 feet of you. Like straight, like fucking gets beamed down, like in Star Trek. Just shows up.
Just appears from thin air.
I mean, in fairness, there's lots of cool stuff you can do there. Like, I'm immediately thinking how it'd be awesome if, like, it was like sort of like a zombie and they crawl out of the ground, like they pull themselves out of the earth, like, you know what I mean, like stuff like that, like animated armor, or like you could do lots of cool stuff there. But I do think it's just so funny, the fact that they just immediately show up. There's not like, within the next 24 hours you will be contacted by a 4th level fighter who wants to follow you. You know what I mean? Like something that sort of gives the DM a bit of time to prepare. The fact that literally it's just like someone gets beamed in from fucking space and just shows up and they're like, I follow you now. Like, who are you? It doesn't matter. Like,
My name is...
they're like they show up and they're like, I don't have a name. You have to name me.
My name is Jen Eric, the fighter.
Human. There's a name I can trust. Yeah. So the night's cool because it lets you play with another character. And also, obviously, it has that great thing where if your party member, if the person in question has this extra character and then their main character dies, they can continue as the other character if they want. Or a new person who loses their character... another player who loses their character can inherit this sort of companion.
The little squire.
Or a new player could sort of show up and be like, oh, can I play? And someone could say, yeah, you can play this knight character I have who follows me, and you can just play them, and we'll just say that they get a bit more independent. You know what I mean? So there's some cool stuff you can do there. I like that card a lot overall. I think it's kind of fun.
It is a fun one, I think.
Yeah. And of course, it says you control this character, but I think you can, talk to your player about that. Because I think at times you might find running 2 characters kind of boring. I think the classic compromise is that you control the character like in combat, but the DM kind of pilots them outside of combat. So the idea is like, if you're playing like your kind of main character, for lack of a better word, and you're doing something, you might just go, oh, I've forgotten about Jen Eric. And the DM goes, oh, Jen Eric is actually just waiting in your room. He's cleaning your boots and, he's preparing a meal for later. Like, he's just doing, like, what he was expected to do as sort of your servant.
Does stuff. He's just the stuff guy. He'll constantly surprise you with pleasant little things that he's done for you. Like, he'll do
a
the
little
dishes.
mint on your pillow. He's very thoughtful.
Yeah. Oh, how sweet.
And then you could seduce yourself with your own character. And who doesn't want to do that? Okay, so... The next up is Moon. I think it's your turn, Tim.
The Moon. You are granted the ability to cast the Wish spell 1d3 times, which is real powerful.
Heckin' good.
Heckin' good. Like, even at like the highest level wizards, I think you still only get one
9th level
spell per long rest.
Yeah.
So to be able to do it 3 times.
So you can literally outcast a wizard.
Yeah, for a day.
for once. So what's interesting is immediately I'm thinking about how the Wish spell has, if I recall correctly anyway, like expensive material components.
Oh, yeah.
I might be mad, but I believe it costs something like 25,000 gold to cast.
Looking it up as quickly as I can.
Oh, thank you very much. So all I'm thinking is like, there's an interesting dial there as the DM that you can play with, where you can either say, no, this is a sort of a magical ability given to you by a sort of artifact. You can just cast Wish. You know what I mean? Like you don't need the components. Or you can say, no, you actually do still need the components.
I just found it here, and the components are exclusively verbal.
Oh, fair enough.
You just have to state that you can create an object of worth up to 25,000 gold. But yeah, you just say the wish.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Okay, so yes, you don't have to worry about that, because I was just thinking, maybe I'm thinking of another edition, or maybe I'm just mad.
It's possible.
But yeah, so this is a very, very cool ability. It plays very well with other cards, like the fact that you can use the Wish spell you've just gained to figure out where your friend who got dungeoned went.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Immediately what I'm thinking is, like, it'd be so interesting if a player drew the Wish card, the Moon, and got the ability to cast Wish, and then used it in some way to manipulate the deck. Like if they said, I wish I would only draw good cards. So let's say they say, I'm going to draw 6, and they draw 1, and maybe it's just gems, and then you get some money, and then 2, they draw the Moon. And then if they said, I wish that the rest of my draws were good cards. Like, that would be really clever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd completely just be like, yes, you get away with that, absolutely. Because I just think that's so cool.
I think it's a funny way to mess with other people as well. Because if you have had the opportunity to draw the Fates card, and somebody undoes something, you could just be like, I wish that didn't happen. Like, I wish that this thing that this person undid actually did happen, or was like twice as bad or twice as good, or
You could wish for just a different thing happening, which would be even funnier.
Yeah,
that like
yeah.
creates the same effect. Yeah, so so the moon, super good, super straightforward. You just get a bunch of wishes. I've always been kind of like attracted to the idea of just starting a game and giving my players. I kind of did this once, of just giving my players a wish spell.
Yeah.
And just letting them, like, just give them one, literally just give them one wish spell that they just have and they can carry with them as long as they want, just to see what they do with it.
Yeah. That's kind of cool.
I kind of did that in my last game where I ran a campaign where the players were all villains rather than heroes, and the sort of introductory adventure was that they all were invited to the unbirthday, which was something that a friend came up with. What I really like, the unbirthday of a lich. Basically, a person was turning themselves into a lich, and rather than doing it in secret, they like invited all their villainous friends and kind of important evil people from around the world. So it was like a who's who of bad people.
Is this Christopher Lee's League of Evil? Evil League of Evil.
The Christopher Lee's Veagle.
The Christopher League of Evil.
League of Evil. It predated the League of Evil, unfortunately. But anyway, so this lich who had just transformed, the party was attacked by paladins, who obviously wanted to stop this from happening, and so the party fought them off. And as a thank you, the lich said that he basically wrote an IOU, like he literally got a piece of paper and say like, for services rendered, whatever his name was, this group of people, and he listed all their names, like one demand of their choice. The idea being that, like, because they had some like pretty lofty ambitions, one of the players wanted to take back their old kingdom, but to do that they needed an army. So the idea is that they could request the lich make them an undead army, for example.
Yeah.
So they had a bunch of options.
I mean, it's more if they were given a wish, but like they could just wish for the kingdom to themselves. But you're suggesting that it's a favor that the lich owes them.
Yeah, it's more like exactly. It wasn't specifically like you have the wish spell. It was more like you have this very, very powerful patron who, regardless of what you ask, will give you it because they've made a deal with you. They've said, whatever you want, I'll give it to you once. Hilariously, what my party wished for is one of with the same party member, the guy who wanted to take back his kingdom, just wished to be very, very strong. So the lich was just like, okay, +4 strength. And that was it. And I said, like, yeah, the IU disintegrates. And the party spent like 40 minutes berating this guy for using up their one wish. And they were like, wait, it could have been anything. I'm like, yeah, that was the idea. You guys could get whatever you wanted. And they were like, it could have been anything. And they're like, it was very good. So that's the reason I think it's a good idea, because inevitably the party will use it, whatever way they use it, they will be upset that they didn't use it another way. And that's just very, very funny. So obviously in this case, it wasn't quite just here's the wish spell. It was like, oh, you've earned the favor of this person and they'll do something for you. Yeah. But that's kind of a nice, elegant way of representing the same thing. But I do think there could be a lot of fun in specifically giving them the wish spell and saying, you just got the spell. Like, you can just make a wish and then you get whatever you want.
As many times as you roll on the D3. Cool.
Okay, next up, Rogo. I don't know how this word is said. I don't recognize it. Rogue, a non-player character of the DM's. That joke doesn't work because it's not visual.
Yeah, we're playing D&D.
A non-player character of the DM's choice becomes hostile towards you. The identity of your new enemy isn't known until the NPC or someone else reveals it. Nothing less than the wish spell or divine intervention can end the NPC's hostility towards you. I feel like this card makes a lot of assumptions, and so I don't like it.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of assumptions that the party interact with NPCs that are approximately as powerful as they are, or more powerful, and it also expects that they have relationships with those NPCs that they care about. So the reason I don't like it is because, unlike a lot of these other cards, kind of all of them do to an extent, but this one in particular makes a lot of assumptions about you as a DM.
Yeah.
right? Like, when you think about the fact that this book is called The Dungeon Master's Guide, the magic items are in here because they're supposed to make your campaign more interesting.
Yeah.
This card is making a lot of assertions, like, you better have a good NPC who can betray the party and it'll upset them and it'll be meaningful and clever. And, like, they don't do any of the groundwork, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing here to suggest how to do that. It just says it just happens and you make it really cool.
It just works on the assumption that you are the kind of DM that, like, presents in these large characters. Like, it kind of puts the onus, it gives more work to the DM, essentially, to, like, build these relationships so that they can knock them down. Like, if somebody hadn't read this and they were just running, like, a dungeon crawler kind of thing, like, maybe it's, like, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of situations where this will kind of push you into a bit of a corner with regards the NPCs that you've created. And if you have plans for them already, you have to kind of flip them on their head, which I suppose could be kind of an interesting way to make somebody improvise around whatever. But that's on the DM. Like, the DM is in control. The game isn't in control, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think basically Rogue is on the same spectrum as Balance. They're both cards that just get someone and turn them into something else. So, like, Balance makes a good person bad or a bad person good, and Rogue makes a former ally or companion evil. I think, like, yeah, I don't know. All I think when I see it is, like, it's just so kind of, it's so vague, right? Like, it's so like, oh, an NPC becomes hostile, and it's not clear that they're, like, it's so, like, it's literally like, it feels more like an adventure hook than a magic item.
Yeah. It's kind of milquetoast as well. It's like, oh, you know some people, one of them is evil.
Yeah, and, like, all I can think is, like, if the party are high enough level, that just does not matter.
Yeah, it really, like, wouldn't. At
yeah,
this point,
like,
they're suggested, like, to be around about level 7 or 8 or higher. Like, most people in the rest of the world aren't the super powerful adventurers, and unless you have made, like, people that people can aspire to, nobody is really going to be as powerful as that. And the more powerful people will, I mean, from my world, you guys have experienced Helena, this super powerful paladin / cleric who is enormously powerful, but can also be, like, influenced by this kind of, by, like, the one of my big bad main characters. And so, like, yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with that.
No, neither was I. I was waiting.
Yeah, sorry, but
no, don't apologize.
It's basically, like, the only big characters that would be able to threaten your high level party would be very, very obvious, I think, is what I was getting at.
Yeah, that's a good summary of it. Like, you know, it's like either the DM picked the one of two NPCs who actually can threaten us, and therefore we kind of know who's going to do it, or it's another NPC who is unexpectedly a high level or is suddenly going to have to level up a lot faster. Like, you know, and obviously that's kind of a gamist term, but you know what I mean? Like, if it's obvious that this person has needed your help a lot, and they're obviously not as powerful as you because they are asking for your help, and they've made it clear before that they can't do what you do, that, like, for them to gain the ability to suddenly match you, you need to be able to explain that. Even if it's as simple as, like, I drank a good potion, like, you still need to say, this is the reason this happened.
The next one is Ruin. All forms of wealth that you carry or own other than magic items are lost to you. Portable property vanishes. Businesses, buildings, and land you own are lost in a way that alters reality the least. Any documentation that proves you should own something is something lost to this card also disappears. Oof. I mean,
this card is fine. It's like, it's kind of, it basically, it doesn't really matter because the most valuable things a party member has on them
are
is magic items.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the fact that it doesn't take those is kind of like I would actually prefer if it did everything it did, but also, like, you lost, say, like 1d3 randomly selected magic items are also lost.
Yeah.
So, like, I think that would be more interesting because I realistically think that there are so many games where, like, I mean, like, take either of the games that, like, I'm playing in, like DC's game and, like, when I'm jumping in occasionally as a guest star in Brady's game. Like, if I drew this card, now obviously in Brady's game I'm kind of guest starring, so it's not really the same. But I think if anyone at the table drew the card, they would be kind of a little upset, but they don't think they'd care that much. Because you've all got a good amount of money on you, but the most valuable items you have are your magic items. You don't really have anything else of value.
Yeah, I mean, the typical adventurer doesn't start with like, I have so much business and so much property, and I'm just doing this to like get away from all of this. Like I want to become a high adventurer like all of you people. They're typically the outcasts and the movers and the shakers and the people that actually want to cause action in the world or be part of action that is like happening, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree. And like there are types of games where you get businesses and stuff, but I don't know if those types of games overlap much with games where you get the deck of many things.
Yeah.
I do like the detail that the like businesses, land, and property you own are lost in the way that least alters reality.
Mm-hmm.
I just love that. Like, I love that sentence so much. It's like, it's literally the kind of bureaucracy that a god would have to deal with. You know, like, how can you remove this building from existence while causing the least amount of damage to reality? Like, I think that's just really funny.
Meteor.
Meteor strike. So yeah, Ruin is sort of like kind of probably normally kind of boring, but it's not bad. It's just kind of disinteresting.
Yeah.
Like it's not bad in the same way Rogue is bad. It's just kind of like it's a bit meaningless. It does have the fun thing. It does do the same thing as the Idiot, where it's kind of swingy, right? Like if you're the kind of player who has a lot of wealth and has invested in business and stuff, like for whatever reason you've kind of done that in your own time, this card is like obliterating. But then if you're just anyone else in the party, you're like, okay, I don't care, I still have my magic items.
Yeah.
And the same is true for the Idiot. It's like if you are one of the two classes that actually wants a good intelligence score, you are very upset because you've lost your most valuable score. If you're anyone else, you're kind of like, okay, I guess I have 3 less intelligence. Sure.
Cool.
I've forgotten some things I learned in school.
Whoops.
I can't read as quickly as I used to be able to read.
What is calculus?
Okay. Next up, Skull. Spooktacular.
No.
You summon an avatar of death, a ghostly humanoid skeleton clad in a tattered black robe and carrying a spectral scythe. It appears in a space of the DM's choice within 10 feet of you and attacks you, warning all others that you must win the battle alone. The avatar fights until you die or it drops to 0 hit points, whereupon it disappears. If anyone tries to help you, the helper summons its own avatar of death. A creature slain by the avatar of death can't be restored to life. There's a profile here of the avatar of death.
Mm-hmm.
They are fine.
Yeah. They don't do a huge amount of damage, and
that's the weirdest thing about them. Yeah. So just go over it very quickly. Avatar of death. Yeah, medium undead, neutral evil. They've got 20 AC. That's their biggest defense. They've got 20 AC, which is okay. Hit points, half the hit points maximum of its summoner. So whatever the summoner is, half of that much. So if we say that you have about, I don't know, around the level you might be drawing this, let's say around like, I was going to say 70 something probably. So maybe they've got around 30 something health, which isn't really a lot at all. Okay, they've got a 60 feet movement and a 60 feet fly speed, and they can hover, which means they can move in place without needing to kind of go and obey the rules of the world.
All of their stats are 16, which give them a plus
all their
3
stats are
to
16.
All their checks.
Which is interesting. I was thinking because... Let me just check now, actually. Because in tarot, death is normally 13. So it's interesting that they went with 16 instead, although I guess 16 is a better number in D&D.
Yeah. I think it is basically base plus 3 for the 13. They went for the plus 3 as opposed to the actual stat 13.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. It is immune to necrotic and poison damage. It is also immune to the conditions of being charmed, frightened, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, or unconscious. It has 60-foot dark vision, 60-foot true sight, and a passive perception of 13. It speaks all languages known to the summoner, and its challenge rating is a line, which I think suggests that it's just based on whatever your character is.
Yeah, because obviously it scales with your character. Sorry, the reason it's 16 could be because 16 is the tower.
Oh.
Which is obviously destruction and the end of a journey. So that might be the reference, that you're like, this could be your end. Your endo. So yeah, it has incorporeal movement. It can move through stuff, but if it stays in something, it takes damage, which seems kind of lame to me. It can't be. It can't, oh yeah, it has immunity to being turned undead, which would be hilarious if they forgot that. And then it has its reaping scythe, so it's 5 foot attack. Oh, sorry, it just deals 1d8 plus 3 plus 1d8 plus 3 slashing and plus 1d8 necrotic damage. It does not roll to hit. There is no saving throw. It just deals that much damage. So its main strength is that it can deal 2d8 plus 3 damage guaranteed every round, but it doesn't have multi attack and only has half as much health as you have. So I don't know. No. I think it really depends. It seems like there are certain players, certain characters who could very easily dispatch this thing.
I think the people would have the biggest problem with it are the casters or the archers, because this guy can get right up against you very, very quickly with his huge speed and then just keep slashing at you, and you won't be able to do very much about it without taking quite a few opportunity attacks and like taking quite a bit of damage.
Well, yeah, but that's an interesting thing. Can he make opportunity attacks? Because he doesn't have any attack.
That's true.
He just has an action. I don't know. Yeah. I honestly don't know. It's just a thought.
It's an interesting one. Yeah. It's kind of cool. It's a bit of a random encounter table idea, but yeah, an avatar of death.
Yeah, and then if you beat it, nothing happens. Yeah. But if you die, you can never be restored to life. So
it's kind of a kick in the nuts.
Yeah. Okay, next up is the star.
The star. Increase one of your ability scores by 2. The score can exceed 20, but can't exceed 24, which is very unusual.
So yeah, that's interesting. It can't exceed 24. I don't know why they chose. I'll be honest. I don't know why they chose any limit. The only thing I can think is because you can draw from the deck of many things multiple times, that they didn't ever want it to be the case that if you got lucky, you could keep upping your stats. But I just don't think it's that big a deal. Maybe that's just me, but like I guess I feel like I just wouldn't bother putting a limit on it. I'd just say that like it can increase your stats as much as you want, and it's just a +2. The only other reason I can think to say it can't exceed 24 is because it encourages people to not just focus fire the one stat they want to increase, that they'll actually kind of use it to balance out their character and get a little better at stuff. Anyway, the sun. You gain 50,000 experience, and a wondrous item, which the DM determines randomly, appears in your hands.
Again, useless in existing games.
Yes, yeah. Weirdly.
Bizarrely.
So weirdly. Yeah, useless in an actual adventure league or adventure path or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Literally does nothing except for gives you an item.
And a wondrous item, yeah. Which is cool.
Well, yeah. But like, to clarify, in comparison to Key, it's a wondrous item and it does not specify a rarity. So you could just get like a bag of holding or something.
Or you could get another deck of many things.
Yes, a second deck of many things.
Just like I've always wanted.
I'm going to draw from this one. Oh, no.
I found one. I hope I can find another.
I wish I had another. So that's okay.
Not terribly exciting at all.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Next up is Talons. Go ahead, Tim.
Talons. Every magic item you wear or carry disintegrates. Artifacts in your possession aren't destroyed, but do vanish. Woo!
So this one is super, super punishing.
Yeah.
And I like it. I like this one a lot. This is probably, along with Dungeon, it's my favorite bad one.
Yeah.
Because in the same way that Dungeon sort of goes, you're just gone. You're just gone. You have to play a new character.
Mm-hmm.
And like what I like about this one is that unlike Ruin, which kind of goes, everything that isn't magical goes, and it's kind of a damp squib. I like that this one was just like, your magic items are gone. They're just gone.
No, my favorite sword and my nice tiara.
my headband. Like what I like is that both in general and also like the design of 5th edition is such that you are never supposed to need magic items. Magic items are supposed to be like an optional system, effectively.
Right.
Like even without a magic item, you should be able to hit enemies of appropriate level and stuff like that. So, what I like is that this, in other editions of the game, this would be debilitating. This would be basically a game over.
Yeah.
Because like the obvious example is Pathfinder, which I also play. Pathfinder maths relies on you receiving regular magic items. Like literally needs you to get magic items, and for those magic items to be a certain power level. And if you don't, it's not that you won't be able to do anything. It's just that like if, for example, you're not a caster, if you're like if you use like a weapon, if you don't have a good enough magic weapon, you just like won't hit most of the time. And when you do hit, you won't necessarily deal as much damage as you need to.
Yeah.
So it's all very reliant on it. So in Pathfinder, this would be like awful. But in 5th edition, it is still awful. But it is also like, you're still alive. You don't have any debuffs to your character. You know, you've still, like, your character sheet, aside from your inventory panel, is effectively unattacked, you know?
I was going to say that this is a very effective one in 5th edition because it's more narratively bothersome than it is actually bothersome to the person. And that kind of goes in... It like works in the world of the 5th edition because 5th edition is made to be more narrative, to have like you're motivated to build your character more, and this is like a prompt to do either a bit more character building or to basically just go down the shop and grab some new stuff and learn about it and use it and become familiar with it.
Yeah, I mean, like when I guest starred in your game that Brady's running, like you guys have enough magic items now that like I just borrowed one from you.
Yeah.
When I needed one, I was like, oh yeah, I'll just borrow one. Great.
Cool.
So like, you know,
around.
like, yeah. So that's the other thing is like, you can kind of generate some cool camaraderie where someone loses their magic items and then the party kind of chips in to give them like one or two so that they can keep fighting or that they can still do stuff they were doing before. You know, and like, so that's cool. I like that one a lot. Next up is the Throne. You gain proficiency in the Persuasion skill, and you double your proficiency bonus on checks made with that skill. In addition, you gain rightful ownership of a small keep somewhere in the world. However, the keep is currently in the hands of monsters, which you must clear out before you can claim the keep as yours.
Oh no.
This one's fucking radical.
That's really cool.
If it wasn't already obvious, this one's very, very good.
Yeah.
Because depending on so what I really like about this one is that they have actually like thought of what feels like everything. So obviously like it's old school D&D to like get a keep, like get a fortress and like live from it and act from it like a sort of a permanent part of the world.
Yeah, central hub.
And it's exactly, and like it's kind of less common in later editions. So like what I like about this is that it calls back to that old school and it gives you a keep. But rather than just giving you a keep, it tells you it's full of monsters. So already you've got an adventure hook. And then finally, because it gives you the persuasion skill and an ability and basically expertise in persuasion, that basically like is useful because obviously if you are running a keep, you need to be diplomatic. But what I like is that it also means if you just want nothing to do with the keep, you still get something out of it.
Yeah.
And like you still get something like, you know what I mean? Like it would be so easy for like, it's kind of like something we've criticized about previous ones where they just give you experience or whatever. And it's like, well, hang on, you know, your adventure paths don't use experience. So this is useless. You've given me a card that does nothing. Whereas like, this is literally the opposite. This is like, we've given you a keep. We've given you an adventure with a keep where you can get to know it and you can, you know, become attached to it and you can find out its history as you fight these monsters, which is all really cool if you're the kind of player who's interested in that. But if you're the kind of player or if you're the kind of character who you think, no, I don't think my character would really want that, then you've still got this new skill and you've still got expertise in the skill. You know, you've still got a benefit, even if you decide not to interact with the rest of it.
I think like a very frequently used skill at that, like persuasion.
I was going to say, yeah, like a very useful skill, especially a very useful skill to have expertise in. Mm-hmm. Like, so like that's why I really like this one. I really like it because it's so like it just gives you something no matter what you want.
It's a little of everything. Mm-hmm.
It literally is a card that like is like, oh, you want a new adventure? Here's an adventure just for you. You're gonna get something cool. You're gonna get a castle. You don't want the castle? Okay, well you've still got an adventure in the keep, and you can just learn about it. You don't want anything to do with either of those things? Okay, well here's a new skill and expertise in that skill.
Yeah.
So that you are now like the most persuasive member of the party. You know. So like I just think it's so great. Like it literally just feels like, because of the like different things they've done, they've covered all their bases, and I think that's really cool.
It's very fun. Like it gives you your adventure, and it gives a gift to both the DM and to the player, I think, you know?
Yes.
Like,
yeah, that's a good way to summarize it. Yeah.
Because I think if you draw your cards kind of on your downtime, and your DM is trying to think of something else to come up with, and you draw the throne, you're like, oh, cool, sweet, I've just been gifted an adventure hook.
Yeah, exactly.
It's perfect. It's nice. And it's
Perfect.
Sweet. Perfect. Cool.
Sorry, so next one is you, Tim.
The Vizier. At any time you choose within 1 year of drawing this card, you can ask a question in meditation and mentally receive a truthful answer to that question. Besides information, the answer helps you solve a puzzling problem or other dilemma. In other words, the knowledge comes with wisdom on how to apply it. So that kind of leads the DM to have to kind of create something around that, I guess.
Kind of. I don't know. I guess it depends. Like, it really, all it does is it says that like you get one free question to the DM. Almost you get one free in character question to the DM,
or to the world of the DM. Like,
yeah, of course, yeah. But like, I suppose what I mean is like to the DM from the point of view of like, the DM is your world, and like the question sort of says it has to be truthful and it has to be useful. So you are effectively just asking the DM something.
Okay, I think that would be easier for someone like me as a DM who has a lot prepared and can just snap off an answer to virtually any question that they have about the world. But I think for someone who doesn't have the kind of structure that I do, it could also give them another adventure hook. Like they could ask something, a broader question about like something that they are curious about in the world, like why something is happening, and it could lead them down a track that would jump them into another adventure, which I think is pretty cool. So it's a gift to virtually any type of DM, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty straightforward. It's one of those ones where it's actually a very simple card, and it's also kind of one of the lesser powerful ones. It just kind of has a bit of text just to explain the idea that this card isn't supposed to be like the monkey's paw. It's not supposed to be like, oh, you used it and now you're cursed. It's supposed to be like, you use it and you get useful knowledge. So that's fine. Nice and straightforward. I'd probably almost always use that one because I think I like, in the same way that I talked about how I like giving my players wishes, I like giving my players this even more because like it's not even power, it's just they can ask for knowledge, but they need to know what knowledge is worth
knowledge
getting.
Is power, Daniel.
Yeah, but it's not as good as like a magic item.
Indeed.
Okay, last card, the Void. This black card spells disaster. Your soul is drawn from your body and contained in an object in a place of the DM's choice. One or more powerful beings guards the place. While your soul is trapped in this way, your body is incapacitated. A wish spell can't restore your soul, but the spell reveals the location of the object that holds it. You draw no more card.
Meta.
So this is fucking cool. It's like super dungeon. It's like dungeon. It's literally just dungeon again. Except for it's not your body, it's just your soul. Which, hey, good news. It means you're not naked.
Hey, well, your soul is naked wherever it is.
That's a good point. Your soul's always naked, though, Tim.
This is true. So you can't really bare your soul. Your soul is always bare.
Anyway, yeah. So this is actually very similar to the Void.
This is the Void.
Dungeon. This is very similar to Dungeon. Dungeon puts you in sort of a suspension chamber and freezes you until someone comes and gets you. Whereas the Void takes your soul from your body and puts it somewhere that the party have to find. So they are very, very similar.
It doesn't suggest that your character changes at all. I think it's just you recognize that your soul is gone, and maybe like all those kind of stereotypical things like your breath doesn't cause like condensation on windows, and maybe you can't like leave imprints on places like when you walk, like you don't leave footprints or something, which would be cool as a rogue or something. But that's like that kind of stuff. Like if you were missing your soul, you are still yourself, but there are certain odd things that you find, especially if you're like a cleric or a paladin, that you might even lose connection to your deity, which would be hardcore.
Well, I guess it depends on your interpretation. I'm interpreting this ability based on the spell Magic Jar or Soul Jar, one of those two. Basically, it's a spell where you can trap someone's soul inside a jar, and like while they are in it, their body just shuts down, and like they're just like, you know what I mean. So, sort of in the D&D context, the soul is like the animated body. So when you lose your soul, your body just shuts down. It continues. I think the suggestion is always like your body continues to function biologically. So like you still breathe. And like I think you can either say that your body doesn't need food or water, or that it kind of like it just accepts it if it's given, but doesn't have any. It basically has no action. Like it just reacts. But that's very much up to interpretation. Like this is kind of a little bit vague. I would definitely play it as the classic, just your soul leaves your body. Sort of like Yu-Gi-Oh rules, I guess. For just a point of a cultural touchstone. Like you just kind of collapse and you're still alive, but you're not able to do anything.
Yeah, you're like not present. Else.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Okay.
But that's up to interpretation. The interpretation you had there, Tim, was really interesting because I'd never thought of that before. But that doesn't mean it's incorrect. And it's certainly very interesting. So that's cool. Oh, so do you want to call it there, my friend? Because we have gone a bit long.
We did run a little long there.
I think we made the correct choice deciding just to do the deck of many things.
Yeah.
As always, my foolish concern was that we might go a bit short, but instead we did the opposite.
Of course.
This has been sort of a bumper length episode.
A whole extensive episode with 2 of your 3 favorite podcast hosts.
And a cat.
And Ivy interjecting to drop a pan.
Oh yeah, which is very important.
Very important. I hope that was
that's going to be in the lore Bible. So don't forget that.
Indeed. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in this week to listen to us ramble on about a sweet little deck of things. We do this every week, and we appreciate that you guys all listen virtually every week.
Yeah,
we see the numbers, and it is delightful.
And we hope you're enjoying it. If you have any insight into the deck of many things, if you've used it in a game, if you have thought about using it or had different cards appear in it, that would be very interesting. If you have maybe a better understanding of its relationship with the tarot deck, that could be cool. This is the kind of thing that I could probably look up after the episode, but like, I still like hearing from people and hearing their perspective. And if maybe you've used, maybe if you have a good understanding of tarot, that'd be cool to hear from you. So let us know. If you'd like to get in touch, we have a website, creatureclubpodcast.com. Which you can find all the episodes there. You can comment below the episodes. There's also a contact us form. If you write anything there, it gets sent directly to our email, or you can email us directly at creatureclubpodcast@gmail.com. Is there anything else, Tim?
No, I think that's it. You can
subscribe to our RSS feed. We're on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or whatever you're supposed to call it these days. We're on that, and our RSS feed is also on other things. We were on Stitcher and now we're not, which I have to look into, but I just haven't because no one's mentioned it. Like DC was the one who mentioned it, and he is on the show, so I was like, okay, well maybe nobody's noticed. So if you'd like us to look into putting our podcast somewhere else, you can let us know, because we're basically interested in putting it anywhere. It's just a case of knowing where to put it. And I think that's everything.
That is us.
One last thing I'm going to mention here, because we mentioned it last time and DC isn't here this time. DC released his first EP, his first solo EP, obviously, and I'm sure you've heard it as well at this stage by now, Tim. It's called Not My Day, and his solo name is Freaky Love Cult. It's a great song. It's a lot of fun. I really like it, and I recommend it to everyone. You can find it on all the streaming services, so whatever you've got, you can find it. Definitely worth a listen, and I'm sure DC would appreciate it.
Absolutely. Give it an old listen. It's a good song. Good catchy tune.
It is. Yeah, it is. It's a banger.
Absolutely.
It's lit, fam. It's fire. I can't do those ones.
I can't see a way out, Daniel. Let's get it out.
I can only do like
podcast.
banger and stuff. Like I can only do kind of Irish colloquialisms.
Oh yeah, it's massive lit.
All right.
Thanks everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for listening to Treasure Trove. If listen forever, we need to stop talking to him.
I have been Tim.
Thank you, and I've been Dan. See, you have to say I've been Tim first because
Yes.
I can't. I can never finish an episode.
I've been Dan.
It's part of this dark curse. No.
And I've also been
No.
Tim. And I've also been Mikey.
Oh God,
And
it's all coming out.
We don't have a Mikey, so I will say stay cool.